Hello, welcome everybody to our Kanban New Zealand meetup. Today was Jutta Eckstein on the planet sense and SOS, sustainability meets agility. Super excited and super how can I say, super actual topic of the days, really. I'm really curious what she's gonna tell us about. Jutta has been in the agile scene, I think, for so many years. I don't know how many decades, but for ages. And she's always been agile methods and framework agnostic. That's what I like about her. You can see it by the books that are already in that slide. There is no actual method mentioned. But she was into scaling agile long before any of the agile scaled frameworks were actually on the market. So welcome, Jutta. And I think I'll head straight over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for the great welcome. Thank you, Silke, also for inviting me. Yeah, actually, the one book you were talking about, that's this one, the Agile Software Development in the Large. So I published that in 2004, and yes, definitely nobody was really interested in scaling at the time. Yeah, so some people might know me as an author, speaker, and also coach consultant. However, not a lot of people know that I'm also trained as a pollution control commissioner on ecological environmentalism. I've never really worked on that, but I did this training actually also in the 90s. So you can tell I'm quite old. All right. And I started with XP in 97. So we get also this straight. So before Agile, if you will.
You're just experienced. You are not old.
Okay. Yeah. I hope that I have the experience and not only the ages. Another thing that not a lot of people know is that I really love hiking, and maybe also not what I have talked about, what I have done in the 80s, now even further back, as I protested in the streets against acid rain and forest dieback. Now, I still go hiking, and this is a recent picture that I took from the area that where I'm living, and you can see there, which is kind of also what the latest report said. So there is a forest report coming out every year, and the latest one that came out in May, and they stated that 80% of the trees in Germany, so this is where I'm based, are actually damaged. And in that area where I'm living, you have sometimes the feeling it's more like 100. It's well, the planet sends an SOS. Another thing why this topic is really with me is I'm a passionate scuba diver. Also, once I've been diving in Wellington, by the way. Yeah, and
it was probably down by my side because I actually live I live next to the diving site.
See, maybe this is where I was. It's also long ago. And what concerns me as a scuba diver is the various forecasts that are made or put out there. So there's the one forecast that says by 2050, there are supposed to be more plastic in the sea than fish. And actually, I just recently read that they have corrected this further, so sooner to us. Don't remember the real dates. And in 2030, they expect that all coral reefs are damaged. So this is also kind of with me here. Now, so we are talking about sustainability here. And before I really dive into what has this to do with us, I would like to hear from you. What do you think, or how do you think Kanban, agility, and sustainability really connect? And that's a Menti, and I believe I've also copied the link. Yes, so you find also the link in the chat. You can use the QR code if you want to do it with your phone. And yeah, then I'm really curious to hear what you believe. What is the connection here? And you could definitely also say, well, I don't see any connection. That's not anything that's really happening. Now, I'm not sure if the updates are really working. Not so far. It seems nobody has. No, the first ones are coming. Adaptability and feedback is what you need for both, I guess, is what you're saying. It's both long-term. Yeah. What else is coming to your mind? And again, it's also fine if you're saying, I don't see a connection here, if you don't see one. Reacting to change. Work breakdown. So kind of incremental or stepwise approach. Let's wait a little bit more. Reacting to observation. So we need to look what's happening and then react to that. Culture. There is nothing standing out, but it's all kind of, yeah. I see that you're looking at it, especially from the way we are working in Agile, and that this could probably help, and that's absolutely true. Let's move on. So thank you so much, first of all. And it was maybe a little bit unfair to ask that question without giving really a proper definition of sustainability. And I want to do this after having presented the purpose and goal and the little agenda for today. So I really think that agility comes with a responsibility. And what I would like to do with this session today is increase the awareness about that. And my little agenda is it's a way that I like to work, which is what, so what, now what? And we start with the what. We are at the moment in welcome setting the stage, and the big thing would be then coming up with defining sustainability, where I said, well, maybe not really fair to ask that question without really having defined it. Then so what, I want to connect sustainability, and now what, we are really gathering data and are analyzing the data, whatever from whoever's here and is hopefully playing with me. So let's go into the what. And the what is, again, kind of what's actually the definition here. And there are various definitions out there about sustainability. And the very first one is definitely true. Well, they're all true in whatever way. And it's very broad as well. So it is from the United Nations, from the Brundtland Commission. And the definition says that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So it's mainly telling us, for whatever we are doing, we have to keep in mind if what we are doing is now at the cost of future generations, or if it's helping them as well. So this is a very broad definition, super helpful, super usable as well. So it could be a question you can ask yourself almost for everything you are doing. However, it's also very broad. And if we think about what we are doing in our daily work, then maybe it doesn't provide enough guideline. Then there's another definition that comes from the United Nations. These are the 17 sustainable development goals. And they're really concrete. So you see there is, for example, zero hunger, or with me and my scuba diving passion. So here, life below water, and all kinds of things. And this is way more concrete. What areas we should look into and take responsibility for. However, here I have more the feeling it's maybe too fine-grained, and maybe it's too far away from my daily work. So when I develop software, I'm not sure how zero hunger is really affecting me, and what can I do with the software that I'm building or the products that I'm building? Well, of course there are some, but that's sometimes too far away. And even if I really like scuba diving, unfortunately, I'm not doing it every day. So life below water is also not really something I'm dealing with like all the time. Therefore, I really prefer that kind of Goldilocks approach. So the Brundtland to prod, the sustainable development goals to fine grained, and there's something in the middle, which is called the 3-pillar model. And as it says already with the 3 pillars, so we start with the first one. And the first one is called sometimes human or social and people. And it looks at aiming for equity, health, and livability. And just maybe giving you one connection already here is, sorry, giving you one connection here to maybe creating products that also has to do with diversity and inclusion and accessibility and all of that. So it is maybe already a bit a closer connection than what you might think at first. Then the second one, environment and planet, is about protecting the planet. And that's probably the thing that comes to mind first when we talk about sustainability. Well, except for in the agile field where some people say, well, if I hear sustainability, I think of, nobody said this here, by the way, I think of sustainable pace, or I think of making agile sustainable, but that was probably the way I kind of framed it already with the S.O.S of the planet. So here, we should maybe consider more stuff like the carbon footprint of the software we are creating. Maybe this is already something we should keep in mind. And then looking at the third part, the economic and profit, which is actually a thing where we often think, what has this to do with sustainability? Isn't that a bad thing? However, as it's defined, it says improving the lives and prospects of everyone everywhere, which also means, well, on the one hand, it is absolutely fine to have economic growth. It's actually even one of the sustainable development goals. However, not at the cost of somebody else, not at the cost of our partners, clients, employees, whatever. So it still is about improving life and prospects of everyone, everywhere. Now, sustainability really sits in the middle. It is a holistic approach, and we always have to have all 3 pillars in mind. And there we have the same thing. You could easily also focus on one of the pillars, again, at the cost of one of the others. And this is not what we want. So now, especially if we are talking software, and even if you maybe are not all into software, but I guess most of us are, then sometimes the idea comes up, well, software comes to the rescue to all of that. For example, we can have an ebook without killing a tree, or we can, for example, right now, we are meeting virtually because of software that enables that, instead of me traveling to New Zealand, which I really would love to do, and not having that carbon footprint, or also like the supply chain, which is typically based on the software algorithms and finding the best route, that we are not spending too much resources till something gets to where it needs to go to. So that's kind of, yeah, software to the rescue helping here. On the other hand, I have also this question mark, really, software to the rescue? And I want to look into like 2 areas here for software right now. The one is the energy forecast that has been created in a study about IT. And that forecast or that research said, well, there is of course a bandwidth. Whenever you look into the future, you never can say like it will be exactly like that, and therefore it is kind of broad. However, it does say by 2030, it could happen that IT takes up 21% of the overall energy that's consumed. This is big. And by the way, at this time right now, IT has the same energy consumption as flying has. So it also already is something that is, well, it is a carbon footprint. That's one aspect. Another aspect I would like to talk about is the big topic of electronic waste. So the United Nations, here we go again, the United Nations is creating monitor a report every 5 years, and the last one has been created in 2020, and therefore has looked at the year of 2019. And there it has been found out that 53.6 million tons of e-waste have been generated, and that this is a plus of 21% in 5 years. So this is just a lot. And well, I kind of hear you, especially because I've been emphasizing software so much. What has this to do with software? I would say a lot, because if you think of a thing like a phone, most often we throw it away because the software is not supporting the hardware any longer. And that is also true for a lot of stuff we are creating. So even if we are not in the phone business also, but it is just that we are pushing with the software the clients to throw out their electronic hardware, so creating electronic waste in that sense. And so I think we also have a responsibility here to pay more attention to the possibility of really using older equipment. And by the way, just to maybe conclude this little story, so this is a Fairphone, and it is super old. Actually, it is more than 6 years old now, 6.5. And I now really have that problem. For a while, it was kind of okay because the community is still providing updates on the OS. So I'm on Android 10, which is pretty good for a 6.5-year-old phone, I think. So for the ones who are using Android, I think 11 is what's the right number right now. However, I have every once in a while apps that say, oh, the app is not supported by my phone. So, and I will see how much longer I can use it. And I can also assure you that it's quite often that I feel like I really should throw it out and I'm fed up because it's slow and all of that. However, maybe this is also one other thing, what has really changed with the big term of digitalization, or with that there is like software everywhere, is that the production of the tools of like a phone, the production of the phone is costing 90% of the energy a phone consumes of energy over all its life. So it's not so much about do we save energy like while we are using it. Actually, it's similar to laptops and all of that. So it's like for laptops, I believe it's 80% during production that energy is consumed. So the thing we can do most about here is, or how we can support the planet best, is keeping our systems as long as possible. And I know this is sometimes really tough. I would like to invite you to try something out, and I'm happy if you are not wanting to do this right now. It's something that's looking at our digital carbon footprint. And let me see. I would like to just show it to you as well. And where do I have it? I have it here. And yes, here we go. So that's the thing that should show up if you are going there to this, if you're following that link. And if you do so, you can just select and track the tools you are using. For example, I'm having a laptop, I'm also using a monitor, I do have a smartphone, and so on. And then you can also look into this and say, like, how many units of that do you have and how much do you use it, and well, for how many years. So this would be here for me the thing where it's where I'm using it much longer. Probably it is almost 24 hours, I don't know, let's say I'm also sleeping a bit at least. I have one, so that would be this, and then the carbon footprint is calculated. So this is just, I now not going through it all with whatever is my thing, but it might be interesting for you to understand what is your own digital carbon footprint. And this is kind of like a sidetrack where it's more on a personal, individual level. What is it that we can do? However, you could also think of it as what is it for a team or a company or whatever, but it's really meant more on the individual household level. And yeah, might be interesting to explore. Okay, what I want to do next is actually diving into the 3 pillars and looking at examples, both positive and negative, that are going on in that area. Oh, and maybe before I do that, are there actually any questions? Oh, well, you could also type that in the chat. And if you have any comments, questions, I'm happy to monitor that as good as possible.
I've got an eye there as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so then I'm diving into the pillars now. Let's do that. And we are starting with the environmental pillar. So this is from a white paper from Google, and Google says, well, in 2007 already, there have not been a lot going on in 2007, unfortunately. They became carbon neutral, and in 2017, they were the first ones that matched 100% of their global annual electricity with renewable. And they even want to go further, that by 2030, they want to operate 24/7 carbon free. So this is great. And I have to kind of say, I believe, like a disclaimer, and many things are explanations to that. So one is, for all the examples that I'm giving from people or companies here, no matter if it's positive or negative, this never means that the whole company is like on the positive or negative side. Like this sounds now, Google is just great and they do a lot around sustainability. Well, they do not. However, this is something where they really pushed for more sustainability, and with that pushing, and also with the, well, maybe marketing they did around that, what they really also managed is push the competitors. Because for quite some time, it was that, for example, AWS from Amazon, that they kind of ignored it. And there were rumors where people said, well, it is because of the really heavy clients they are having, and they have really good clients in the fossil fuel area, and that's why they were hesitant of putting something like this on their agenda. However, this has changed massively, and they're catching up really very fast. So there is not much difference anymore from what they're claiming. And now I'm coming to the other kind of disclaimer. So this report, see, now I don't know, I think it's from 2000, yeah, it says already, it's from 2017. However, since then, I know that the Ministry of Environmentalism in Germany is trying to validate those data and has asked Google for making the data transparent so they can measure it and report on it. However, Google doesn't make the data transparent. So we don't even know if that's true. So one of the things that I believe we really should do is we should keep asking for those data and asking the companies to really make transparent what kind of energy they are using and how much it is and all of that. And there's actually an update that's very recent, and now I'm speaking of the EU, and I'm not sure if there's anyone who got up so early this day that we have somebody from Europe here. However, the European Union has just decided that the heat that's generated by the data centers should be really used for heating in the cities, which is a great regulation. However, I believe from all that I know, and I'm by no way an expert on that field, but from what I know, and that's also true for this, what you're seeing here from Google, that thing here, because it says it's from Finland, that a lot of the really big data centers, they are really far away from cities. So that probably is a good attempt, but a lot has to change to really make that happen. However, I also know of a few data centers that are close or even in the city, and then it would be easier. So that's a great start. Anyway, moving on. So we are still on the environmental pillar, and I also want to kind of close this up with a statement from Andrew Cheen. He's the former editor-in-chief of the CICM. That's well, based in the US, but actually an international organization, especially around IT. So it's the Association of Computing Machinery, pretty old. That's why it says computing machinery. I guess nobody would say that nowadays. And he said, it is time for the computing community to face up to computing's growing environmental impact and take responsibility for it. And I can just only emphasize that. And yes, it's true. Now let's move on to the economic part. And I want to provide an example that's maybe super strong, but still, I have seen more of those. So this is about Chef, and Chef is an open source cloud software, and it's also a company called Chef that's maintaining that cloud software and consulting for it and all of that. Now, this was also in 2018. People have found out that Chef is used by ICE, and ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement in the US, for managing the detention camps at the border to Mexico. I guess you have also had this in the news, that at least it was also big in Europe, about like separating the kids from the parents and all of that stuff. So not really something where you would say, oh, this product is really improving the lives of everyone everywhere. Well, not so much so. However, so they had been protesting and not much has happened actually, until the moment where there was one developer who said, well, it's open source after all, so I'm deleting all my contributions to the system. And this created so much pressure that the headline you are seeing here had been generated, so that Chef then let the contract with ICE expire. So my point here is, and that's maybe even more true in the agile field, that very often we are more looking at well, it also says in the manifesto, looking for the customer's advantage and so on. So making the clients happy, but we are not often looking at what happens then. So we also should go like the next step and see what's really going on with our system. And for sure, Chef, again, the open source cloud software, nobody had intended that it will be ever used for managing a detention camp. So, however, here it was like for the better, the overall resolution. Again, there are other examples where maybe it wasn't so good at the end. Now, I also want to kind of close that with a quote, and that it's by Larry Fink, and CEO of BlackRock. And I want to stress that again, definitely not everything that BlackRock is doing is great. However, I really like the statement that Larry Fink put in his open letter to the CEOs, where he said, society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. So it is really asking for that economic part in sustainability. And I, can only stress that. Now, moving on to the social pillar. And I said already, so it might be or could be about diversity, inclusion, accessibility, and all of that. And I have found you some examples from Twitter. Twitter is always a good source, not sure for how long, after all the changes going on right now. Probably in the future, you see sources from Mastodon. So this was Shirley posting on Twitter and showing that she wanted to create a new account, but couldn't because the system expected the patient's last name to be at least 3 characters long. Now, let me make that clear. I'm 100% sure that the team that has created that system didn't think like, we don't want to have people like Shirley Wu. So making this by intention not usable for people with 2 characters long last names. I think it is really more that they were just not aware of it, that this could happen. They were thinking about themselves, looking around in the team, and then finding, well, that's probably a good number, 3 characters. I want to share a different example, also from the Twitter source, which was those 2 guys who had a video call together, having fun there, and then they started playing around with virtual backgrounds, and then this happened. And so the person with the dark skin wasn't detected as being a human being, and therefore it was put out as the virtual background here. And again, I don't think well, maybe I don't want to think, but I don't think that this has been done on purpose. I think the problem is that all too often the teams we are working in and creating the products are too homogeneous. We need more perspectives. And so we have that awareness of there might be people who are completely different than us. And one of the things that I have started doing now is actually in teams, when they work with personas, or maybe suggesting to work with personas, also suggesting not only looking at like the core target group, which is important, which is good, but every once in a while, also questioning and thinking about what actually happens if a complete opposite persona would use it, just to ensure those edge cases. So it would still mean we are developing for the target group, but we want to make it accessible and usable for everyone. So talking about that stuff and thinking about that stuff happened to me that I got invited for a podcast and an interview that's been hosted by Jeremy Kriegel. I'm not sure if some people of you might know him. He's on UX. That's his big topic. And then I made a statement, and he said, Jutta, I think this is Eckstein's law. And since then, I'm running around and kind of with a wink or grinning. So this is Eckstein's law. So don't take the law too serious, but still. An organization produces a design that reflects the organization's biases. So this was a statement that I made, and where Jeremy said, well, I think this is or should be Eckstein's law. And if you call it a law or whatever, it doesn't really matter. However, the statement still holds, which just means, for example, we are looking for people like us. And we also want to have a team that's kind of alike because it's more convenient, it's maybe nicer and all of that. However, we are missing perspectives, and we have to be aware of that. And yes, if this statement reminds you of Conway's law, then that's very true. This is where it comes from, kind of. It's a derived Conway's law thing. Okay, this was a quite long, outrageous section on what do we actually mean when we talk about sustainability. I also made already a little connection to IT and software and how it's really also our responsibility. I want now to dig deeper into, so what does this actually have to do with Agile? And I know a lot of you are more in the Kanban community. I still looked at the two really big organizations, and you can correct me for Kanban here, or maybe look it up. The two big organizations and what they are saying to sustainability. And in my opinion, Agile made a promise. And if we look at the mission of the Scrum Alliance, it says we are on a mission to create Agile workplaces that are joyful, prosperous, and here it is, sustainable. Then the Agile Alliance says, through the last decades, members like you have helped make work more effective, humane, and sustainable by applying the Agile mindset and methods. So there is this term in here. I'm pretty sure when it got in there, the two organizations didn't have sustainability in their mind in the way I was just talking about it. I believe they were more thinking about long lasting. Maybe they were thinking about sustainable pace. However, I do know for sure that now at least the Agile Alliance sees that exactly in that way. And you can already get a glimpse on it if you think of effective, humane, and sustainable. But also if you go further there, it's actually where they are talking about membership and what they are offering to the members. Then they dive deeper into all of those words. So on effective, humane, and on sustainable. And this is what I also want to present to you. So when they dive deeper into more sustainable, I don't want to go through all of that, but what they are saying definitely is create positive economic, social, and environmental outcomes. That sounds very much like the three pillars, right? Economic, social, and environmental. These are the three areas we are looking at. So this is like one of the things, at least now the organizations have seen that there is something going on, and that really we should take care and take the responsibility of sustainability. There's this one thing. Then there's another thing. So when I worked with my co-author John Buck on our last book, that's the Bossa Nova book, which aims for or looks into company-wide agility, we were realizing that once a company really implements company-wide agility, there comes an expectation with this. And the expectation is that, well, just if you look at the team, if a team says we are agile, and then somebody finds out, well, they are not inclusive, people would say, well, I thought you're agile. And if a company claims, well, we have implemented company-wide agility and are therefore an agile organization, and then people would find out, for example, they are not paying fair, then also people would say, well, I thought you're agile. So there is this hidden expectation that's really coming with agile. Well, and right now, at least what the Agile Alliance is saying here, and thank you, Silke, for sharing also about Kanban here, is it's not so hidden anymore, but it had been for quite some time. And that's why John and I were also, that was kind of for the wrap up or the last part of the Bossa Nova book, we looked at what do actually those values mean in the sense of that expectation. So we have been looking into transparency, self-organization, continuous learning, and constant customer focus. And yes, you can also think of more values, but we kind of looked at these based from the manifesto and kind of thinking about what do they mean. And if we look at those, then for example, for transparency, it says make the company's actions transparent, both internally and externally. Well, and if you think about, for example, the what I shared about the Google data centers, well, it's good that they have that white paper and they have that ambition, but it would be even better if they would make the data really available and transparent so we can all learn from it and are really sure that they are doing what they are claiming that they are doing. Then for self-organization, the point here is that really no company is an island, but it is actually a node of a global network, and that in that network or with as part of a network, it creates an environment it lives in together with other companies and societal institutions. So this goes also a bit in the direction of the economic pillar where we are saying, well, we do have economic growth, but not at the cost of our partners, clients, employees, and all of that. So we see that we are part of a bigger network. When we look at continuous learning, it's about learning continuously from and with society to make the whole world a better place. And for the customer focus, understand the economic, ecological, societal, and social environment as a customer that needs permanent attention. And actually, that last one, the customer focus, what I nowadays often do is when I start working with the team next to that persona thing that I was talking about earlier, is that I'm asking, when we discuss stories or priorities or whatever, what would happen if we regard the planet as one of our stakeholders? How would the priorities change? How would it change what we want to implement and how we implement it? So just keeping that in mind from time to time sometimes does help to make a next step. Speaking of the next step, so the question is, now what can we actually do, and what can we do with our knowledge, experience, and so on that we are having in Agile, no matter what kind of framework or method you are using? There are actually, on a broad level, there are two things. So on the one hand, there is sustainability by Agile, which means we are using our Agile practices and mindset to increase sustainability. And this is actually more the stuff that you came up with when I asked you about the connection between Kanban, agility, and sustainability, like the kind of the incremental working, or that we have to deal with complexity, that we have to be responsive and all of that. So that this is something that we bring to the table here. I have a very concrete example. A colleague of mine has posted on LinkedIn, I believe it was. So Nicole Bellilos said that she had been helping a group of refugees as a Scrum Master to create a food saver app. And this was under the umbrella of something that's called Hack Your Future. I know that Hack Your Future has been founded in the Netherlands, but they have spread out. And I believe there are similar things going on like everywhere. And I'm not sure if they are, for example, in New Zealand, but probably there's something different happening there. So Hack Your Future has the idea of helping refugees to show their IT skills for making it easier for them to find their next job. And sorry. And so Nicole was going there helping just one group of those refugees as a Scrum Master to do that. So she was bringing her actual practices and mindset to help those refugees. Now here came another thing to it, that those refugees also decided they want to create a food saver app. So it's kind of a double-sided increasing sustainability. So things like that you can do. Or an example for myself, this year I had been working with Steve Hollier for a nonprofit organization on environmentalism, one of the really big ones, and help them to create their next campaign. And we use like story mapping, event storming, and all that stuff, also open space, and help them this way to get going. So we can use what we know to increase sustainability. Then I said there on the pod level, two things, sustainability by Agile and sustainability in Agile. I want to take that comment and question later. And the sustainability in Agile is about use sustainability to guide your action outcomes in Agile development. And I do have an example here. So what we can do is having a definition of done or acceptance criteria that verifies that the carbon footprint or the energy consumption of our system does at least not increase. So that we are more aware of what we're implementing and that it doesn't do any harm, for example, on the environmental side. I see. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm looking at the comment, and actually I'm talking to the Ministry of Environmentalism here in Germany, and they are not enabled to get their hands on the data to make that measurement themselves. So they are publishing about that, but they are not. So Google is not enabling others to verify that. And that's what I mean for transparency. Yes, and actually they are talking about that since 2007, not even 2011. So it's longer ago, but they are not enabling others to measure that. So that's at least what I know from the Ministry of Environmentalism. Okay, so we're still on the now what, and what I really would like to do is that we gather some data here. So I want to invite you to go there and either use the QR code or, oh, I don't have this ready, so I have to type that up, and maybe you can do so faster than I do. And you go to the bit.ly and see meetup. Oh, it was almost good. I believe it's that link. And you will find there are some statements there. And if you look at those statements and think about where you are working or any team you have been working with, and how those statements are true or not true, or maybe false. So that would be great if you could do that. And did I write it wrong? Thank you at least for doing that. 20. And yes, we will take some time to answer those. And I will see what's coming out here. Very sorry to see you leaving. And maybe also what I want to tell you that this is just like a shortcut here, a short version of a longer assessment. Right. So we have the first person, I believe, who has been
Jutta?
Yeah.
That word sustainability, it's been hanging around for so long. I remember, I'm coming from a banking career originally, investment banking and that kind of stuff. And there are so many sustainable investment funds, for example. And I've always been really skeptical about it. And most of them claim to have only companies in their portfolio that are sustainable. But I think that word is just used so much without any definition behind it that I think you cannot actually really measure if that is true in the end.
For some things you can actually.
Yeah, the question is if they do and how they do it. I mean, an organization, have you ever measured like companies, they of course they love to claim themselves sustainable, but how do they do that? I mean, what benchmark do they use? Or
there are various ways, and one is, sorry, I'm still kind of trying to create the report and I'm almost there. I think I am there now. One is that they're looking at like the company itself, and so it's more like how do they invest, or what do I need to do? Update, and I move it over, and we are there. And I want to look into this. And for example, where do they invest and how do they treat their employees and what do they do with waste management and where do they get their energy from and all of that. So this is stuff that you can measure. And it's actually also the EU that is right now about to regulate that companies above 250 employees really have to report on their impacts on sustainability and on their progress. So this is really part of the reporting structure, or will become. And for now, they only have to provide a financial report if they're doing well or not, but this is changing. So there are things you can measure really. And now what we are doing here is a little bit different, because we are looking at the product creation, where there is so far not a lot that's going on here. However, what's going on, especially in IT, is that there are more and more who are offer how you can measure the carbon footprint and energy consumption of the system that you are creating. And this is, again, that's real data. And speaking of real data, I would like to look into that. And there's still the Zoom window coming into the data that you have been creating. So we see from the social part there, you are quite high, 3.91. That's well, on the other hand, it goes up to 5. So there is still a possibility for improvement, but it's kind of the highest here, which doesn't come, I would say, it doesn't come too much as a surprise, because everything about diversity, inclusion, equity, and so on has been on our agenda. And I especially talk about our community for quite some time. And that's why more has been done in the at least 5 years. And then if we are looking at economic, you are here at 3.68. That's what you're having, and 2.77. That's not that high for environmental, and 2.71. I want to do an update. Maybe there had been somebody else coming in, and I would like to go here. No, it's still about that same. And now let's dive into, I don't know, which one do you want to dive into? I don't know, I take the holistic. And what we see is now, what's perhaps a little bit better, is that the company is protecting and improving the environment by embracing sustainable practices. The product services contribute to create a social, economic, and environmental balance. That's not so good. And I guess one of the reasons is that we don't know, or we never looked into that. And this is perhaps why that is the case. And then my favorite one, like prioritizing the planet as one of the stakeholders, seems to be not so true for a lot of you. I don't know. I think what I want to do is sharing with you in the chat that report, so you can also dive into it yourself and take a look and play around with it. You can also, of course, look into one of the others. So this is very balanced. They are all just not really good. If I look into the environmental aspect, what about economic? Do we see there are quite differences? I guess we do. So the team responds promptly when security gaps, vulnerabilities become known. That's also not a surprise from that perspective, that security, it was really not on our agenda for a long time, but I believe it started maybe 10 years ago or so, where it became more of an item we really need to be aware of and be concerned about. And that's why we also see it takes some time till this is really happening. Then we have, I know how we decided to our target audience should be. So it's kind of in the middle, some, and the team knows which features are really used. That's actually kind of good that we are here at 3.5, although I still think very often we are not so much aware about that. And if you think about examples like the Word doc, also the Word editor from Microsoft, where people say it's actually 80% of all the features that are not used. I don't know if this is still true, but this is what I once read. And I also don't know if it's really measured. But the thing is, for sure, a lot of the features are not used. And that's probably also true for the systems we are creating. So maybe we leave it here right now. And I would like to open the floor and want to know from you, like, how was it taking the assessment, or any other comments, questions you are having? Is there anything remarkable standing out for you, positive or negative? And yeah, would be curious to hear from you. Any questions, comments? Or if you want, you could also answer it in the chat if this is easier for you to do. Bye, Philip. Yeah, I know it's super early here for us. So there is another person from.
Thanks for swinging by, Philip. Yeah, he actually joined a bit later.
Yeah.
It was after you asked if anybody's in Europe, from Europe.
Okay. The assessments were straightforward. What do we do if our customers are not so interested in sustainability? Actually, I would think this kind of assessment, and again, it was just an excerpt. So you had been, I think, answering 4 times 3 questions, so 12 questions or statements. And the whole assessment, I will provide you the link for the whole assessment at kind of the closing slide. That has about, so more than 40, so 40 statements in there. And also for you to know, it has been published under Creative Commons, so you can use it and try it out. So now back to the question. So that assessment is actually not so much looking into what is the customer really doing. It is more looking at what are we really doing. And it is looking into kind of various areas, so the different pillars, and how is what we are doing impacting the various pillars here. And then from that on, it's the question, what could be our next step? So it's actually not necessarily directly related to the customer. Well, it would be great if it would be. And things like, well, we are concentrating only on the features that are really used by the customer. And a lot of the stuff would help the customer anyway, because it makes the system better. So they probably are always interested in having a better system. So that would be my answer here. So I see more people are dropping off. Thank you. Any other comments? And you can also speak up, of course.
For me, why is this actually echoing? Somehow it's echoing.
Yes, you do have an echo here. Maybe till you figure it out, I take what Chanel has put out here, that she found the assessment interesting, found some questions hard to answer, some parts of the company would score higher than others. But in respect to IT software-based work, it's not such a focus. That's true. Yes, some questions are hard to answer. Sometimes we just don't know. And so one thing that I hope that assessment can help, that we start asking around, that we ask for that. So for example, I don't even know if this was part of it, but I know one of the statements says, like, if the energy that's used by the company if this is renewable? And most often we don't know. However, we can ask. And it's not like a difficult question to ask. And the more we are asking about things like that, I think the faster the awareness increases. And also, another thing for me, at least with this assessment, it's at least we are at this stage right now where it's not so much for us to find really good answers to everything. Maybe you're surprised by this, but I think where we are right now is we need to start talking about it. This is what's important right now. And by talking about this, so the assessment can help you to talk about this and again, raise the awareness. And so we can get started increasing sustainability. And so, yeah, and then hopefully at one point we have good answers too.
Is that the reason why there is no answering option of, I don't know?
There's a not applicable, should be.
Yeah, but not applicable is a different thing than I don't know for me.
Yeah, that's true. So we could have done that this way. That's true. I would have thought, well, I would, or I clicked not applicable if I don't know, but yeah, maybe we should change that. Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, if it's the purpose that you want to make people talk about it, then maybe it's good that it's not there.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's true, because you can then start hiding. Yeah. Anything, anyone else? Any comment, question? And Siva, I don't know, maybe it's working now. It did work before without an echo.
So if I summarize, did you, Siva, did you want to?
No, I was just wanting to thank Jutta. It was quite an eye-opening kind of perspective, actually, because in the previous organization that I was working, it's a government organization. When we were talking about even accessibility, the development team were not actually looking at it as something that they want to work. It's like, oh, someone has problem, we will actually build this product, and the accessibility team somehow will actually look into those products and outcome and make it more accessible. So when I was talking to them that, what's the point of actually building a product when it is not going to be, accessible to, many of the clients and the customers who needs these, services. So trying to actually ask them to look into this accessibility from day one, putting them into definition of done and, having that, in their mind was, a new thing for them. So similarly, this sustainability as well was, that kind of a perspective. One of the questions which I found that was a big thing for me is that having the planet as a stakeholder, as a customer, that is a massive big one. So there's a lot of thought-provoking kind of questions, and I really appreciate putting forward this talk and that questions. Thanks, Jutta.
Thank you.
The one thing I'm wondering, I mean, it's about raising awareness and asking these questions in organizations, but the link to agility and agile, I mean, shouldn't all organizations start asking these questions, no matter if they claim to be agile or not? Absolutely,
I completely agree. So we have been a small team working on this with the support of data analysts. However, it was me kind of starting the whole thing. And when I started it, I was thinking about that, but then I thought, well, I have that, in quotes maybe, that reputation in Agile. So I'm kind of in the Agile community. So it's for me much easier to have a broader reach if I'm in my community than if I start going places, nobody knows me there, who should listen to me. Yeah, but this is the main reason. And then I know that the Agile community is also big, and it still keeps growing, and so it can be a leverage also. So from various perspectives, also from that well, again, also at least here in the EU or in Europe, let's say in Europe, we are still talking a lot about digitalization, and not everyone knows what they really think what it is, and so on. Yeah. However, by doing that, there are more and more people learning about Agile, and so we can also piggyback on that. So that was kind of my thinking. However, you are completely right. It doesn't have to be bound to Agile, but the way it has been created, actually it is, but I'm not even 100% sure if that's still the case. Well, or putting it the other way around, I guess for somebody who's not working in an Agile way, that assessment makes still sense. And now talking about this, so where it really came from was that at the beginning, it was especially Claudia Melo and I, we were looking at the manifesto and looking mainly at the principles and saying, okay, what does that principle mean if we are looking at it or examining it through a sustainability lens? So, for example, this for customer advantage, then we thought about, well, who is actually the customer? And so then it was that planet as a stakeholder, and so on. So we came up with, like, still sticking around what Agile really is, but then thinking, what would that mean if we keep sustainability in mind? And so we ran a series of workshops with people, and based on those workshops, those assessments have been kind of, I don't know, emerged. Let's put it this way. And so I guess Claudia and I, we can still trace it back to the principles, but still, I guess the assessment would also make sense for people who are not working in an Agile way, because it has gone through several iterations till it was there. And who knows, most likely it will change again at one point, once we learn more. All of us, I mean, learn more about it. So I don't know, maybe it's also too late for a lot of you. And
I'm thinking basically, maybe others are thinking too. It's a big topic, right?
It is.
I find.
It is.
And
And actually, this is maybe for me a really important thing. I just wanted to say most important, but that's probably not true. But a really important thing, that topic is so big, it's so complex, and it's hard
complex
to grasp.
Is the other
it.
word
So,
I wanted to say,
so we are all overwhelmed. And I just think that assessment can help us to just come up with one step. And so we make it more approachable and easier for us to get started doing something with it. And that's hopefully a contribution that we are making with this thing, and make it less overwhelming.
Jutta, if people like to make this assessment themselves, not as participants, but actually as facilitators, can they use that code in the link as well, or?
Okay, so this would be that one. So the assessment has been published by Comparative Agility under Creative Commons, and that would be the bit.ly link to where you can make it yourself with the team, and you, or within your company or whatever, and create a report for what you are doing. Actually, well, definitely like doing it and then creating the report. It's not difficult to do, and the tutorial is quite good, I think, because Comparative Agility does that for various things, actually also for Kanban. You probably know about that. And so yes, so this is how you can use it. And then it would be the full assessment, not only that short one with the 3 statements per grouping. So for the pillars and for the holistic thing. Yeah.
I've got this random thought in my mind that I think maybe people find that topic too big and too complex to actually get into it, to even yeah, it's too overwhelming, really. So maybe this is actually a good approach, this assessment and this event in your talk, to start somewhere.
Exactly. That's the idea. And it doesn't matter where.
I know so many people who, you know, I'm really radical in my really small scale that I can do in terms of environment. And I've often faced people who say, well, yeah, but it's just you can't do a lot about it. And it's like, yeah, well, but that's where I can start, you know? And many people actually say it's needs to be done by government, needs to go to the big organization. But I think we need to start from both sides, you know, and both is true. And I think people are overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. They're just like, you know, I'm living in this world. I've been born in this world. I know what I'm doing because that's what I've been taught and how I grew up. Yeah. So I'm just trying to assess, you know, what I've just heard from you. And I think it's actually a really good tool to start somewhere.
Exactly. So that's really how I look at it. And also for me, a thing that I did for quite some years, and I can imagine more people. I will want to talk to that. Have done something like that. So I was looking more at my personal carbon footprint, and there is like, of course, stuff I can do, but I always thought, well, actually, I think we should do more in our profession, and we have to be aware of that. And so the assessment is now a possibility again to increase that awareness or to change our conversations, and also helps us to make a step. I see that comment. There's a conception that being sustainable will cost money. That might be true, but in many ways it's actually not true, because we are looking at using not as many resources. For example, we are looking into using less energy. We are looking into making it more accessible for more people. So it is really a possibility actually more to save money, and also to look into not maintaining the features that have never been used, for example. So in the end, at least, that's what I see here. It should cost less. However, as I guess we all know, for everything where we have learning involved, a learning curve always also costs, because we have to get better at that, and also find out about things like, for example, how can we actually measure the carbon footprint of a system we are creating, and so on. And there's a lot under development right now, so that's another thing. So then we have to keep up with what's out there, and it's changing all the time, and so on. But in the end, it should actually save money, both for us and the client. Oh, that's also good to know that you are measuring your personal footprint. Yeah, and I think many people are doing stuff like that, and I just think we should not only do on the individual level. That's also important. And then there's, on the other hand, the company level, where, at least as I said, from the EU, the regulations are enforcing the companies to do more here. Sometimes it's just offsetting their carbon emission, right? So it's not always that it's like a big change, but anyway. what I always thought was missing, the thing in between, which is what are we doing within the teams and when we are creating the products. And for me, this is what that assessment helps us to get a better leverage to, and yeah, start changing things. So.
Thanks, Jutta, for the insights. Are there any more questions or comments? You can also just unmute and jump in. No, I
guess so. Yeah, everyone has to reflect.
Yes, it is a big topic. Yeah. So, well, I will come to an end with the recording. Thank you so much for everybody joining today. And you can watch the recording, of course, on our Kanban New Zealand YouTube channel that you all know. And if you like, you can hang in here. I'll just stop the recording, but we'll still be here if you want to have a quick chat.